here's what really happened to Luke Skywalker's severed hand. With May the 4th right around the corner, news from the galaxy far, far away is coming our way faster than Han Solo can make the Kessel Run, and while there's even more Star Wars goodness to come next week, this week on Wednesday, Marvel Comics Star Wars Darth Vader number 11 answered one of the most enduring questions in all of fandom, namely what happened to Luke Skywalker's severed hand after it fell into a pit during Empire Strikes Back. However, in order to discuss this in detail, we do need to spoil what happens in Darth Vader number 11. So if you haven't read this issue yet, search your feelings and walk away now before you go full Yoda on us in the comments below.
Fine!
R2!
Alright, let's get into it, shall we? Written by Greg Pak and illustrated by Raphael Ienco, Star Wars Darth Vader number 11 is the culmination of the ongoing Into the Fire storyline that sees the Sith hit the fan after Palpatine leaves a grievously wounded Vader on the fiery shores of Mustafar. Basically, Palpatine is punishing his old apprentice for failing to kill Luke and Leia, then throwing a galactic temper tantrum because he learned that everybody hid the truth about his kids and Padme's death from him all these years. And you thought his reaction to Revenge of the Sith was dramatic. After overcoming a series of increasingly deadly trials, including an attack by an assassin of the Sith Ochi Bestoon, a giant sultry lava parasite called the Eye of Webbish Bog, and a gigantic space kaiju in the depth of red space, Vader makes his way to Exegol, Palpatine's stormy nightmare planet that we first saw in The Rise of Skywalker. And as we know from the movie, that's where Palpatine is pulling a prestige by growing a bunch of Snoke bodies in vats and conducting all manner of sick Sith science while his cultists cheer on from their convenient stadium seating. Although the coolest part of this issue is when Vader arrives in style by literally riding that massive space squid to confront old Palps, we soon see a familiar looking object floating in what I hope is a Bacta tank, or maybe space formaldehyde at the bare minimum. By all accounts, this is Luke Skywalker's severed hand, which Vader separated from his estranged son's wrist during their confrontation in Cloud City back in The Empire Strikes Back. Now, I know what you might be thinking.
That's impossible!
Well, not only is it possible, it's now canon.
All of it.
If you remember, the sequel trilogy originally had grand designs on Luke's lost limb as the opening shot of The Force Awakens. As Mark Hamill revealed in an interview with The Sun in 2016, I can tell you now, the original opening shot of Episode 7, the first thing that came into frame was a hand and a lightsaber, a severed hand. It enters the atmosphere of the desert planet Jakku and the hand burns away. However, that moment never came to pass, and now we have our best Luke yet at what happened to his hand, and more importantly, how it connects everything from The Mandalorian to The Rise of Skywalker. As we learned in The Rise of Skywalker, Palpatine and his cronies were conducting all manner of evil experiments so they could build a new host body for Palps to occupy after he was yeeted into a chasm at the end of Return of the Jedi. It's a plotline that's straight out of the Dark Empire comics, and the reveal of Palpatine's evil lab is inarguably one of the grossest and coolest parts of The Rise of Skywalker, where we see that after all, Supreme Leader Snoke was actually a sentient beef puppet the entire time. Who knew? However, in order to make these meat machines for Mecha Palpatine actually operable, he needs blood, specifically blood that's rich in vitamin M, or midichlorians if you nasty, the microbial organisms that are found in beings who are particularly strong with the Force. Beings like the wee baby Grogu, for example, who fell into Moff Gideon's Gideons during The Mandalorian and had his blood extracted to help create these proto-Snokes that we saw a glimpse of during Season 2 of The Mando. But now we know that before identifying Grogu as his prize test subject, Palpatine also used Luke Skywalker's severed hand as potent genetic material, which along with the scalpel of creation that he calls pain, he can use to make anything. But in Palpatine's case, anything mostly amounts to these strange clone warriors that kind of look like Black Manta from Aquaman as a nasty case of grayscale from Game of Thrones. Honestly though, much like how somehow Palpatine returns, it makes sense that Palpatine would somehow track down this dismembered piece of his apprentice's son and use it as part of his deeply questionable science experiments in his never-ending quest to give the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise a happy ending.
It's not a story the Jedi would tell you.
While the narrative reveal is a nice bit of connective tissue, no pun intended, the internet has already started memeing this moment by replacing Luke's severed hand with all manner of increasingly silly things, like Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park, or a bunch of garlic, and the extremely cursed Jar Jar Binks lollipop they sold back during the dark days of the Phantom Menace tie-in merchandise, which, just, you hate to see it. The issue contains some other rad reveals, including Palpatine harvesting a massive mountain of Kyber crystals to power his fleet of Star Destroyers, Darth Vader showing Sith cultists why you don't bring a knife to a lightsaber fight, and most important of all, Vader having a vision of his son Luke, where their roles in Empire Strikes Back are reversed, and Luke is the one to tell his dad that he has the power to destroy the Emperor, not vice versa. It's a nice bit of foreshadowing of what's to come when Vader betrays his former master in Return of the Jedi, and it enhances both the arrogance of Palpatine, who believes he can control everyone around him, and the tragedy of Darth Vader returning to the dark side because he knows that despite everything he's seen during this journey, and he's seen a lot, he cannot resist the allure of power and his master's manipulations. He's just in way too deep. Now, if only one of these Star Wars comics would finally address what I consider to be the biggest Star Wars mystery of all, one which Mark Hamill himself recently brought to light, and one which nearly ruined my life a couple years ago. Bigger Luke. He's still out there somewhere, and I, for one, need answers. In the meantime, though, Star Wars Darth Vader number 11 is on store shelves right now, and we'll have plenty of other Star Wars goodness waiting for you over on Nerdist.com. But in the meantime, folks, tell us, what do you think about this reveal? Are you enjoying these Star Wars comics? Which is your favorite? And does this make you reconsider or appreciate the movies in a different way?
From a certain point of view.
Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.